if anything, is just get them away from the shelling, get them away from the chaos, show them that the humans aren't here to hurt them, that they're going to get food, that they're going doggy walks, and that there's other dogs there that are also relaxed, and it just kind of everything starts gaining a form of normality.
Hello. Our guest this week is Noel Talk, a Swiss-born entrepreneur who's come to Ukraine to help some of the most vulnerable here, pets and animals. He and his team are oftentimes tasked with going into very dangerous areas at no small risk to themselves to help locate, rescue, and protect these four-legged family friends. So Noel, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How did you find your way to Ukraine?
Oh, that's a long story.
Yeah.
But as all these things usually are, I think it's a combination of different journeys that just happen to come together. And I'd say the two dominating themes, if you will, are on one hand, I've been working with humane societies and animal shelters for 17 years plus across the world.
Yep.
And that's always been something that's been close to my heart, alongside building my own company and everything. And then the second thing is that at this point in around 2015, I met this guy called Frederick at a nightclub at 2 a.m. in Oslo, Norway. And I met him at 2 a.m. and at 4 a.m. he said, "Hey, you want to crash at my place for a couple of months?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in." And we were friends, and basically, this is 2014 actually, so we just celebrated 10 years of friendship, and we both went on to build our businesses. Both of them built on WordPress, and he built his company up to 600 plus people. At the time, there were just 4, I think, and yeah, at some point, just a year before Full Scale, his dog passed away. And then he was kind of getting burnt out from work anyway because he was working so much. And then when Full Scale happened, he saw it on TV, having had no previous connection to Ukraine in any kind of large way. He decided to get in a car and drive down, and soon after called me. And I don't say no.
Right. And so with your experience in taking care of animals, you decided that the best skill set that you could bring to bear here would be helping with what was the focus you wanted when it came to, because there's a lot of things, animals need a lot of help here.
Yeah.
And there's a whole range of things that need to be done. Do you primarily tell me about what you focus on when it comes to caring for animals in Ukraine?
Well, in our case, the charity Nordog, we're really frontline rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we're vertically integrated. So we haven't taken in any money from these sort of larger grant organizations, larger super charities, if you will. We've been self-funded through our own donor base. And the activities we really partake in or really execute on is evacuating animals from front lines that have lost all hope. So we're really like their last shot at a life at some point. Mm-hmm. And then the other activity we engage in is food production for the occupied areas. So we last year produced 245,000 kilos of dog and cat food from a factory in Kharkiv. So we turned that factory back on and white label the food ourselves. And then when we evacuate animals, that goes back to our shelter, South Kharkiv, where we have space for maximum 72 animals, as we've pushed the limits now with this renewed offensive in Volchansk and Lipsy. And from there, we also have a sales team, which then are able to find new homes in Western Ukraine, because that's much easier than going abroad.
What percentage of the animals that you rescue from the combat zone are reunited with their prior owners? I mean, how does this process work? Do you get people who say, "My dog, I think is back at my home. I had to leave quickly. Could you go, or is it you go into these villages, you find dogs and cats, and say, well, this is obviously a pet. This is cared for, so we rescue it. I'm trying to get to the question of, how often are you reuniting humans and pets?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say the default when the front line is normal, for whatever that's worth, is either we get calls from neighbors saying, hey, there's a dog in the yard, nobody's caring for it, can you please pick it up? We have various coordinators in these frontline towns, so all the way from Volchansk, Kupiansk, Slovyansk, you go all the way down. We have coordinators which work with our food distribution, but then also take the requests from various families or neighbors that just care for these animals. Yeah. So during normal times of war, it is really just abandoned animals. Yeah. And then the second most popular then is military rotations. So they've been taking care of some animal in some camp.
Yeah, this is a thing about Ukrainians and animals. I don't think I've been in a trench line or out on the front with a unit
without an animal
who doesn't have an animal.
Yeah,
normally it's cats.
Yeah.
Normally it's cats because the cats are really good at also like micing. So you're getting rid of a rodent, but then also companionship. But there's something about Ukrainians and their pets and animals here that's been. It's also a morale booster. It's pets are very good at, sensing when humans are kind of stressed out or when humans kind of need some attention. It's a huge thing. It's not negligible by any sense.
No, not at all. And
so pets are really important. Now you brought with you here today a few videos.
Please.
So let's take a look at. Do you have a preference? You want to take a look at this one first?
Go for whatever.
Okay, so you're out on the front line, kind of combat area, and so now is this? You've got a dog specifically you're looking for, or you're just kind of walking around the area?
So this is the town of Vilche, and this is just south of Volchansk, and. This was, I think it was 3 days after the renewed offensive began. So this is probably May 13th, May 14th. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of evacuation requests from families that left in a hurry. And this is where the reunifications kind of come into play because, as I said before, during sort of the normal kind of frontline warfare, like a Kupiansk or Chasiv Yar that's been going on for quite a long time, that's really abandoned animals. But in cases like this where people have just fled overnight, there's a lot of reunifications. And in this case, we had a call. There was a husky somewhere in here, and we find the husky.
Yep. And you're traveling with Ukrainian. These are proper soldiers, or militia, or National Guard, or
this is police.
These are okay. So these are armed police, and they've got the. I see they've got the, which you see all around the world is the catch.
So that's Pavel. That's my one of my colleagues.
Right.
But yeah, like that's.
And then of course you can hear the shelling coming in. I mean, this is a dangerous thing to be doing. You've got the potential for an incoming round at any minute. But for you, where does the risk-reward ratio come into when you're talking about, and there's the husky, it's a good-looking dog.
Yeah.
That's the pole I was referring to.
Yeah, the catch
pole.
Yeah.
You're taking incoming rounds. You can hear the incoming rounds.
Well, right behind that van was a not too far away. There was an artillery position, and obviously when there's outgoing, then there's going to be a response at some point. So
right.
It definitely woke me up when we first arrived then.
And you can see the anxiety in the dog as well.
Yeah, the animals are traumatized at this point, but because they want to trust you because they have no other option, but they still don't know who you are.
Right.
Right, and that's kind of, it's quite a scary thing in that regard. With regards to the risk to reward ratio, or however you want to call it, I think this is extremely important work, but at the same time, if you want to understand the situation, you just have to put in the work, I think. And what I'm saying by that is when I was telling people outside Ukraine, I'm going to Ukraine to go help animals, they're saying, don't go to Ukraine, it's dangerous. And then when I'm in Kyiv, they say, don't go to Kharkiv, it's dangerous. And when I'm in Kharkiv, they say, don't go to Volchansk, it's dangerous. At what point you want that firsthand information to understand how things really function. And that's given me a great deal of appreciation for frontline charities and the amount of different groups, organizations, and individuals that put in their everything to hold up the front line.
Yeah, it's the wars. I've covered over a dozen wars, and oftentimes in a war, you find the very worst that people can be, but then you also find some of the best. And now, trying to find the video you sent me. That's good, but this is the one I like. I mean, now you say you weren't there on this day, but so that's your colleague.
Colleague, yeah.
And then this is driving through the conflict zone. So, but this has got to be this has got to be so fulfilling. This part here. This is a little girl, presumably in her mother. Oh. Moments like that have got to really make it worthwhile, I'm sure. Right?
Absolutely. And these are the better moments, obviously, because that dog has been, because this is really from the Volchansk and the Lipsy crisis.
Right.
And these animals, they've been alone for 5, 6, 7, 8 days, whatever it may be. And that's still relatively okay considering other stories, we've been to Hatish, which is north of Volchansk. So it's between Volchansk and the Russian border. You're 2 kilometers away from the Russian border.
Right.
And we did that in winter, and there was just 2 alibis. They're just down to the last piece of meat on their ribs, and that's the ultra kind of, they've lost hope. These
the animals themselves.
Yeah, these are animals that normally have quite a lot of strength and are quite wary of strangers, but then all of a sudden can just be pulled around. They'll come to you naturally because they just have no other hope left.
And they see a human. Humans often, especially as pets, associated with food and shelter, and so they will come down. Do you oftentimes find the alternative is true, that they're so traumatized by what's been going on that they're skittish and run away from any human interaction?
Yes, you find all cases. I mean, if they're still relatively well nourished and don't have that absolute staring death in the face kind of attitude, then yeah, they still have leeway to be skittish and to bark, bite, because ultimately a lot of these dogs, especially in the East and these more rural areas, are for security, guarding, or whatever. So there's still that kind of natural reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now here's another good example of this woman who, I guess you got her. It's a collie or something. Anyhow. Okay. So what can you tell me about this?
So in this particular case, this was a dog up in Lipsy.
And she's just
she's an owner, and she fled 3 days before with the clothes she's wearing. So the couple in this case, her and her husband, just had to leave, jump in a police vehicle, get away because the shells started coming in, and she's in tears and apologizing to her dog because this is the second or the third time they've had to go through this, and she's promising the dog, once the dog is outside, that she'll just never do that again in her entire life. That she'll never.
And you can see the dog is slightly emaciated. It's definitely not been eating well. I mean, it's not dire.
No,
but
just dehydrated.
Yeah, dehydrated.
Yeah. And starting to wake up to it, and it's like, okay, this is my home again. It's my family. I'm starting to relax a bit. Not as stressed. We had another lady call us. So we had another reunification just before this one, and the lady called us a couple days before that and said, "Look, please go pick up my dog. I'll give you everything I own." So it's not there's no. It's not about material possessions or whatever. Like you're literally being told to jump in the back of a vehicle, take your kid, whatever you're holding on to, and abandon everything else. And, as you say, like Ukrainians have a large connection to their animals, as I think many civilizations are that simply
This is why we
care.
domesticated it. I mean,
Yeah.
and they become part of the family. I mean, I was down in Kherson, and I interviewed a guy whose dog, I forget what kind of breed it was, but he thought he'd lost it. He
Yeah.
thought the dog, the flooding in Kherson happened,
We were there.
and everybody bailed out as quickly as they could. And there are so many stories of animal rescues that happen there. There's video of it, but this guy in particular, he went back to survey the flood damage, and he found his dog was still
That's
there.
amazing.
So but for every one of those stories, I'm betting there are a lot of other stories that don't end as happily, whether or not it's because the owners have been killed in this god awful conflict, or there's just no way of reuniting the pets with the owners, or God forbid the pets don't make it. You must have some tough times too. For every one reunification, how many times things go sideways.
To be honest, the experiences we have are positive because we have a plan. We know where we're going. We have the details. So we don't tend to we don't pick up bodies or anything like that.
Right.
So it's generally we're very outcome oriented, and we get a lot of information up front, and then plan our days more or less exactly.
Yeah.
So that we can go in, go out, and try to have as much success as possible.
Well, it's wonderful work that needs doing. Now, when you can't find, say, an owner, and you have a shelter, you have at least one shelter.
We have one shelter. Yeah.
Okay. And then you say what you do is you'll go into a village, you'll collect animals because I can see in the back of the vehicle there you've got several
Yeah, we got a few boxes.
there
Yeah,
for the animals, but then you take them to the shelter, and if you can't find the owner, do you make at least a I don't know if any of these are chipped. I mean, probably not in Ukraine, but is there a way for you to try? Is there infrastructure there for you to try and reunite owners with pets?
No, generally not. I mean, the animals in the East are not chipped. In these
But
frontline
just
towns.
Sure, but just I wouldn't expect them to be chipped. But I'm wondering, is there any infrastructure to try and reunite pets and
No, like a lot of the reunification, like I said, it has been really crisis driven. Like the sudden renewed offensive in Volchansk and Lipsy, where all of a sudden there's chaos and there's human evacuations or animal evacuations. That makes a lot of sense. And in that case, ARC, Animal Rescue Kharkiv, and Nordog, our charity, were both completely full from a shelter perspective. The dog hotels, so that's where you bring your dog if you're going on vacation or whatever, were completely full. We were using them, and paying a discounted rate, which was very kind of them. And that meant that there was just no more room for us to shelter new dogs. So the only missions we could undertake were reunifications. But largely, when there's not such a crisis going on, and it's, again, this sort of idea of normal war, then we're really just doing evacuations, which are abandoned animals. And as soon as we have the photos, before we even pick up the animal, it's already up on our Telegram groups, on our Facebook page, to find a new owner. Because we don't have the time. Sorry, we're not a long-term shelter. And the faster we're able to adopt an animal, the higher the turnover, the more space there is at the shelter, and so on and so forth. Right. So we're definitely not long-term. I think our record is 3 months in terms of a dog staying very long, but we try to average around 2.5 weeks.
So your priority is to get the dog, or whatever, cats as well.
We will pick up cats, but then deliver them to Animal Rescue Kharkiv.
Right. the priority is get them out of danger. First
Yes.
and foremost, get them out of danger, get them to where they can be fed and housed, and then find them a new home. Am I understanding that correctly? Or is there
Yeah,
another aspect to it?
I'll break it down. We have we have the request that comes in, the evacuation. We bring them back to the shelter. At that point, we weigh them, just check some vitals, sterilize, vaccinate, chip, deworm, re-socialize. So we bring them on walks and things like that. At the same time, we're doing the sales stuff online in terms of trying to find a new family. Then we do some due diligence around that new family. Hey, is this dog going to be in a yard, on a chain? Like, how's everything going to look? Send us pictures. And then we will actually undertake the delivery ourselves. So we're a bit like Amazon Prime. We deliver the dog the next day.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well,
anywhere in Ukraine.
And how I mean, again, getting back to, I mean, animals are I don't think we give them as much credit as they deserve in their perception of their surroundings and what's going on. I mean, when you're trying to rehouse them, do you ever get a dog that you've rescued that is so traumatized that that his interaction with humans is scarred for the rest of that dog's life? I mean, are there dogs that can't be rehoused because of the trauma?
So Pavlo and Sveta and a few others that contribute to our work are cynologists. So they're trained professionals in handling dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that a lot of re-socialization happens in those 2 weeks. And we've very, very rarely had traumatized cases beyond repair, put it that way.
Yeah.
If anything, it's just get them away from the shelling, get them away from the chaos, show them that the humans aren't here to hurt them, that they're going to get food, that they're going doggy walks, and that there's other dogs there that are also relaxed, and it just kind of everything starts gaining a form of normality.
Yeah.
And at that point, you realize that dogs are highly adaptable and are they can change their wiring pretty quickly around these kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's a reason why we domesticated them. They're just great companions as well. I mean,
Yep.
man's best friend, right?
Yep.
I mean, what do you need? What if you could speak to my audience?
Yeah.
And say, obviously, we'll put a link to Nordog
Yeah,
and
appreciate that.
And all the rest of it. Whoever this is a worthy cause. Obviously, I mean, this is. We talk about the trauma to the people of Ukraine and how difficult it is, but it's the reason why I started my very first episode of this podcast was talking about children that have been traumatized, because there's something about those who become victims of war and don't. I mean, there's no cause, rhyme, or reason. Children, animals, these are innocent creatures that don't deserve what's happening to them. So if there's any way we can support you, I want to make sure that we do it. So what do you need? Do you want to expand? Do you need more? I mean, is it just funding?
It's funding.
Okay, so
Yeah.
how do we help you?
Basically, over the website, we have a donate page, and then there you can set up a recurring donation, $10, $25, $50 per month, and that is amazing for us because for every dollar, we're able to produce a kilo of dog food in Kharkiv. We're able to take care of the shelter. I know we run at a high operational efficiency, and that really means that any dollars you send us just have a massive impact.
And are most of the folks that you're working on, they're working on a voluntary basis, or are these paid employees? Or?
So we're a leadership team of 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's Frederick and myself as the foreigners, the only 2 foreigners, and then Pavel and Sveta, which are Ukrainian, and the rest of the team is also Ukrainian. The Ukrainian side all take a salary. I would say that salary is really about getting by. It's not.
Yeah.
There's, they're volunteering. They're still volunteering in the sense that they could be getting much higher paid jobs somewhere else, doing other great stuff. Because both Pavel and Sveta are Ukrainian champions. Pavel at hunting with dogs, and Sveta with show dogs. So they've been massively successful before full scale in training dogs, selling dogs for these
Animal
purposes.
pet care, yeah.
Yeah, and Sveta even got into a rehabilitation center and everything. They could be doing 4 or 5x whatever they're doing now. This is really like, this is just putting food on a table. There's no profiteering in that regard.
Right, but then,
Yeah.
they're doing this for the love of the animals.
100%.
I mean, I see this all throughout Ukraine in all sorts of different sectors. Is that there is a real sense of it's not the time to be thinking about yourself and your ambitions and your careers. Now is the time for helping one another and helping those who can't be helped, like these animals. So it's a wonderful thing to see. What's been the reaction from the communities that even if it's not somebody who is getting their pet back? Obviously, they're overjoyed to have a family member back. But what's been the response from Ukrainians and just in any sector?
I mean, beyond the response, it's just my overall experience in Ukraine has been tremendous in that regard, where the stories the things you witness firsthand, because I had no connection to Ukraine before, like really zero connection. I crossed the border in Poland and thought, hey, Kharkiv is probably another hour away, Little did I know.
A little bit bigger of a country.
Yeah,
than that.
little did I know that I think the distance from the border or from Krakow to Kharkiv is almost the same as Krakow to Zurich, my hometown in Switzerland. So, yeah, you live and learn, right? But I thought I was, initially subconsciously I was coming in and I was saying, okay, I'm gonna work on this project, this humanitarian project, and at some point you because of the interactions and because of the support and because of the acts of heroism, and just the daily acts of good that people undertake even when people are not looking, it's just been such an inspiring mission that whenever I leave the country, I feel a sense of guilt, and I'm just very appreciative of being able to witness how this country has fought back.
And the resilience and the strength and
Yeah.
not losing their humanity as well. I mean, I see pets in trench lines. I see people going to extraordinary measures like you and your organization are doing. But I've seen that all throughout Ukraine, is that these are not people who are despondent. They're not. They haven't given. There's still a lot of fight left in them in terms of, and also a resistance to giving up. To losing their humanity and their sense of compassion and things like this. And so, I know that animals are a real big part of it. So it's wonderful that you're providing the service. So we'll do everything we can to support you, and we'll get it out there. As you obviously this war is not ending anytime soon, presumably, from what we can see. But what are you hoping to accomplish, and how do you reflect upon your time here and doing, this really important work?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that I ask myself quite frequently, because when I was 27, I decided that by the time I'm 30, I'll have my own business, and by the time I'm 40, I'll have a much larger stake in NGO work. And now I'm 42, and I feel like I'm getting close to that, because with 29, I had my own business, and I'm very proud of what my two business partners and myself have created, Tom Joe and myself, around having one of the largest open source agencies in the world. And that is, to me, quite clearly becoming humanitarian software in such times where we have such decisiveness, polarity, we have disinformation, all these sort of issues. Open source and working together in open ways to create stronger foundations is more important than ever. So I'm very proud of that decade, but I'm also very much looking forward to this chapter in my life whereby I want to be able to continuously learn, apply the 10 years of running my own business to whatever comes next in the NGO space. And for me, this last year has really been, in some ways, paying my dues. So really being on the ground, understanding it, really being able to feel it, so that I can understand how do I then now have a larger and a more outsized impact than I did in the previous year. So yeah, working on a couple of projects around that, and yeah, it's I think all we can try and do is, bounce between these more sort of tactical days where we're in the crazy thing is, for the last decade, I've been saying, in between the trenches and the 30,000-foot view, and now I'm not in the trenches. Other people are, which are even closer to the zero line. But I'm, it's that bouncing between being able to feel and being able to feel the problem and being very close to the problem, because that puts you in the best position to solve it, but then also having a strategic view in order to then try and scale the solution to that problem. So continuously bouncing between those things.
So let me, before we close here, let me just ask something I should have asked earlier, but let me ask it now. Approximately how many dogs do you think you've rescued?
In last year, it was we rehomed 501. So evacuated and rehomed was 501. And this year, I'm not even sure. I'm not sure what the tally is. It's going to be larger.
Yeah, and you're hoping to get even more and more. I'm betting.
And this is where the strategic piece comes in. Do we work more on food? Do we work more on evacuations? Do we work more on sterilizations? So there's potentially a large rabies issue happening in Ukraine. It's already happening in the Kharkiv Oblast, and the reasons are numerous. For one, the vaccinations that were given to foxes is wearing off. So that was a number of years ago. But the vaccination only lasts, I think, 2.5, 3 years for foxes. The farm fields are not being used, so they're just kind of being left to their own devices, which means that there's more rodents, so there's more small food. And then you have a lot of abandoned animals, so they're not necessarily street animals. And a cat or a dog in perfect conditions can multiply into the thousands within a couple of years. Just a single one.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that happen with cats now. So the question is, do we sterilize? Do we provide more food? Do we do more evacuations? And the answer is probably some balance of that, and some form of legislation too. But these are things that are just simply not priorities right now. Rightfully so. Victory has to come first.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But it's good work you're doing. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
for coming
that.
by today.
Thanks,
I appreciate it very
Yeah.
much. Thanks very much for tuning in, and do support.